Regarding the reduction of the consumption tax, Secretary General Moriyama of the Liberal Democratic Party expressed a negative view, saying, "Where will we look for the financial resources?" On the other hand, regarding cash handouts, Representative Saito of the Komeito Party mentioned, "We may consider deficit bonds as a source of funds." Opposition parties call for a consumption tax cut. Kazuya Shiba, Secretary General of the Democratic Party for the People, said, "The handouts are just handouts. It's not the government's money, it's the people's tax money. If you're going to give out the collected tax money in handouts, then don't take it in the first place. You shouldn't take it in the first place." Shiba, Secretary General of the Democratic Party for the People, warned against the idea of handing out cash to the people, which has been floated by some in the ruling party as a measure against rising prices and the Trump tariffs. Shiba, Secretary General of the Democratic Party for the People, said, "When the Democratic Party for the People wants to cut taxes, they say, 'We don't have the financial resources,' and if they say they'll hand out handouts before the election, can they really do that? It's better not to use the Trump shock to do something like an election campaign." The Democratic Party for the People is not calling for cash handouts, but for a temporary tax cut to a uniform 5% consumption tax rate. Following the Democratic Party for the People, on the 11th, the Japan Restoration Party also called on the government to cut taxes, such as temporarily reducing the consumption tax on food to zero. Japan Restoration Party co-leader Maehara Seiji said, "We're not saying we'll do this forever, and for example, a 0% consumption tax on food is important to ensure that the burden on essential items is reduced." Some members of the Constitutional Democratic Party have already called for a zero consumption tax on food. Noda Yoshihiko, the party's leader, who has been reluctant to cut the consumption tax until now, said the following: "Given that measures to combat high prices are still necessary, I think this is one policy direction." Filled Square Komeito leader, "Deficient government bonds will be the source of funds." While the opposition parties are calling for tax cuts, the ruling Komeito Party is calling for the consideration of cash payments as a stopgap measure until tax cuts are realized. On the 11th, Komeito Chairman Tetsuo Saito also delved into the issue of funding. Komeito Chairman Saito, considering that this is an extremely urgent measure, it may be possible to consider using deficit bonds as a material. Secretary General Moriyama Hiroshi of the same ruling Liberal Democratic Party is opposed to tax cuts. Secretary General Moriyama of the Liberal Democratic Party, "Where should we look for funding for tax cuts? What aspects of Social Security should we ask the public to endure? If we don't have a counter-argument, just talking about lowering taxes will cause trouble for the public." It seems that those around Prime Minister Ishiba want to avoid tax cuts at all costs. Those close to the Prime Minister, "We must not cut taxes. If it is still a payment, it is a one-shot deal, regardless of whether it will be effective, so we can prepare a supplementary budget, and if the economy is doing reasonably well, we may be able to manage with tax revenues. But with a tax cut, it doesn't take any energy to lower it, but it takes hundreds of times more energy to raise it. What kind of response is the government considering?" Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi, "There is no fact that we are considering a supplementary budget or economic measures such as new payments or tax cuts, but we will take appropriate measures. As a government, we do not think it is appropriate to lower tax rates." From Good Morning, broadcast on April 12, 2025.